In today's video, I want to help you prepare for a DBA interview. So we're going to go over some common questions that you might have in a DBA type interview. And we're going to cover them from a few different perspectives. We're going to look at it from a technical perspective, from a security perspective, and a performance perspective. And then we're also going to throw in behavioral perspective. Now, behavioral perspective is not specific to DBA. It applies to all types of interviews. So in the area of technical database knowledge, you want to demonstrate the understanding of the basic building blocks of your databases. That includes tables and indexes, of course, but you also want to be able to demonstrate that you understand table spaces and file groups, which are the logical structures that contain the physical data files of your database. You also want to demonstrate thorough understanding of backup and recovery. And so you're going to need to do a little bit of research before your interview and make sure you understand the environment that you're interviewing for. You know, what is this, a SQL Server database, or is this an Oracle database, MySQL, Postgres? And you need to demonstrate the ability to be able to perform backup and recovery in that particular environment. For security and compliance, you want to demonstrate the understanding of things like encryption, data masking, and PII, which is personal identifiable information, as well as PHI, which is personal healthcare information. And you want to show understanding of things like users and groups and roles and access policies. From the performance perspective, you want to be able to demonstrate the ability to troubleshoot things like slow processes and slow queries. Show how you would go about tuning a query and breaking it down. You know, things like looking at the actual query, the structure of the query, the where clause, looking for indexes that can service that where clause, and other things that might be going on in the system at that particular time. So you might have things like contention going on. And you need to be able to demonstrate the ability to do these types of troubleshooting, as well as where are you going to look for problems? You know, what logs you're going to look at, and what sorts of tools and utilities are you going to use to be able to troubleshoot the performance of the system. And lastly, like I said, behavioral, this applies to any type of position you're going to be able to be interviewing for. You know, how well do you interpret tasks? Somebody gives you a task, do they have to explain it to you like more than once? That's usually not a good thing, right? People want to work with people that make it easier on them. And so you want to be able to take tasks and be able to run with them. So can you work independently? And how well do you work with the overall team? And how do you fit in? These are all things that you're going to be assessed on when you're interviewing for a position. So here's a few examples of some technical knowledge questions you might get. From the data migration scenario perspective, you might be asked, how would you transfer data from MySQL to Microsoft SQL Server? And so you'd need to lay out like the process that you would follow, the tools that you would use, as well as any analysis that you'd need to perform in order to successfully migrate the data from one platform to another. For database design challenges, you might get a question like, hey, we need to build a new database for our employee records. And so you would need to demonstrate the ability to collect the requirements, to lay out, so that you could lay out the tables and columns required for this database. You need to interview the stakeholders of this intended system, and also lay out like what tools you might use, like an ER diagramming tool or something like that. For disaster recovery planning, you know, you might have a question, are you skilled with availability groups, data guard, replication? Hopefully you are. If not, maybe do a little bit of research so that you can demonstrate the ability to come up to speed on these things in order to be able to meet the challenges that you might have if you were offered the position. And your response strategy should always be to focus on specific experience that you actually already have, that you've accumulated over time, or even research that you've done that shows that you have an interest in what you're being asked about. For performance optimization, you want to be able to demonstrate the ability to identify bottlenecks. You also want to show that you have the ability to read things like an execution plan, or even how to get an execution plan. And you want to show that you know how to use performance monitoring tools, those that either come with the database or are third-party tools that you've used, and show how that you've used them. You want to show that you have the ability to optimize a schema, whether that's through database normalization techniques, indexing strategies, or table partitioning techniques. You want to be able to show that you know how to measure results. So what sort of metrics would you track? And how would you show that you've actually achieved the tuning that you're intending to do? And then you want to be able to show that you know how to configure your server. So believe it or not, I've actually been in situations where a database server physically had memory, but the database was not configured to use even a small portion of the memory. So we just were able to go in and make a quick change of the memory allocation of the server, and all of a sudden everything started running much faster. But there's a lot of other things. There's a lot of parameters that you can adjust. In most cases, I haven't found that things make a huge difference in terms of these parameters, but like I said, there have been situations where just making a small change in the memory allocation made a huge difference in the performance of the server. For security and data integrity, you want to be able to show that you understand what authentication and authorization are. So these are like things like users and passwords, as well as roles and groups, and how you would grant privileges to those roles and groups and users. For data protection, you want to be able to show that you understand what encryption is, both at data in rest and in transit, which means that at rest is encrypted on the disk, and in transit means it's encrypted when it's going between the server and the client. For audit and compliance, you want to be able to show that you understand what these terms are that regulatory requirements revolve around, which include, like I said earlier, PII, which is personal identifiable information, and PHI, which is personal healthcare information. And then you want to show that you use strategies when you're granting access to your data and your servers. So the principle of least privilege is that you're only giving people what they really need to access. And then you want to be able to discuss what audit procedures are and what things you might be able to enable on your server to enable auditing. Behavioral questions are more kind of like soft skills, but this is really important because this is what really gives someone the feeling that you're going to fit in. So you're going to be asked questions like, what are your weaknesses? And you want to be prepared. You want to have something that an answer that shows that, yeah, you're humble, but you also have a mindset for improvement of yourself. And you might get questions that show that kind of are trying to figure out how well you work under pressure. And so you want to always try and have a process ready of things that you go through, so to keep yourself calm during the situations when things might get kind of high stress. And you might be asked something like, hey, why would you be a good fit? And you want to be able to give experience, like examples of things, situations you've been with, other people, other companies you work for, or teams you work with, and how you fit in. And it would be good if you had examples of yourself fitting in with different types of environments, a large team, a small team, a fast-paced team, maybe a more methodical team. And then you want to have something ready for a question like, what's your most significant achievement? And you don't want to be in a situation where you're bragging about something, but you want to be able to show measured results of something that you've done, and have a process that you followed in order to show how you got to that achievement. As far as overall preparation for the interview, you want to do some basic research on the company you're interviewing with. You want to understand the industry they're working in. You want to understand the environment that you're going to be interviewing for, and if possible, any specific challenges that they are facing. You want to review your technical fundamentals, and you want to make sure that you've got core concepts and very quick blurbs ready to go that show your understanding of core concepts, as well as if you have any industry experience, also have prepared statements that are quick and to the point that show your ability to work in that type of environment. You want to prepare some success stories. Again, maybe 2 or 3 achievements with quantifiable results. Don't be too long-winded. You want to have very high level explanations of what you're trying to, your points you're trying to get across, and leave it open ended and be prepared for more detailed questions if the interviewer wants to dig in. And again, practice clear explanations of everything that you're going to answer. So have everything boiled down. Complex database concepts need to be boiled down and summarized for even non-technical interviewers. So a good thing to try and gather is when you're being interviewed by somebody is what is their background? Try and understand what their role is and ask if you don't understand so that you can have your answers cultivated to their level of expertise. That's it for the video. I hope this helps you, those of you that are preparing for a DBA interview. I appreciate you watching. Please consider commenting on the video. Add your questions down there if you have them. Like, share, and subscribe. Talk to you guys later. Bye.